How are you? Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year again.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
I just had a text message from a friend and unfaithful listener of Midlifing.
Oh, excellent.
Which said, are you enjoying the sweet taste of sovereignty?
That is that is cruel. For listeners, you should be aware that we are recording this on the 2nd of January. We are 2 days into the experiment that is leaving the European Union.
It's that mentality of the empire, eh? Better alone.
I know. Oh. Yeah, which is kind of odd, isn't it, when you think about empire? Because if you're better alone, stop stealing people's shit.
Yeah.
Just stay on your island.
What a thoroughly depressing note on which to start an episode of Midlifing. Although I'm glad to say that you'll cut this out anyway.
Absolutely. I'll stick this at the end and it'll just be like, I'll put a minor key over it, like dee 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 dee. Simon and Lee are sad to say that Midlifing is no longer part of the European Union.
That was wasn't that just the little jingle from that dystopic film Hunger Games? That you just
No, I don't know what that is because I've never seen it. But what I was singing was dee 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 dee, and that was a tune which would play underneath. I can't remember the name of the guy. It wasn't Steve Wright on Radio 1. It was it the Hairy Cornflake? Oh, anyway, it was somebody from...
I have literally, as they say, no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. This predates your time in the UK.
My arrival in this beautiful sovereign island state.
This sovereign island. All I can remember is he played that piece of music underneath, reading out letters from people. This is from Gillian. Gillian lost her partner, Stephen. This is the story of their life. And then it would, finish with them, and this is the favourite song of Gillian and Stephen. It was always like an incongruent, sort of smashing together of a popular song with this really, really tragic story. It was awful. But it had that music playing underneath it, and I now think of that only as the soundtrack of sadness. This is a podcast in which two friends have serious conversations about silly things and silly conversations about serious things.
I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller.
Welcome to Midlifing. Hey, I did want to send you something. This is This is nothing to do with what I thought we might talk about. It's just it's a small video, a short video.
Oh, a short video.
And this is great. This is great radio, isn't it?
This is great radio.
You'll have to. Yeah, I've just sent you a link.
I'm going to now open up the YouTube.
YouTube. Have you heard? Yeah.
It's open on YouTube. Okay, so this is a robot.
Oh, you can describe it for our many listeners.
I can't describe it because it's too beautiful.
It's amazing.
It's a bipedal robot.
Yep.
That is very open at the hip, and it has quite a low centre of gravity, which is surprising considering it's quite heavy at the shoulder, and it's doing a dance and jumping. Work.
And what song is it dancing to?
Do You Love Me, which was made famous in the 1987 film Dirty Dancing, starring Patrick Swayze and... Oh my God, there's two of them!
Anyway.
Ah, there's a dog! This is the best thing I've ever seen.
But the best thing about this is that it was sent to me in an email from a work colleague. And the title...
Now the dog is limp syncing. I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
Whatever you're going to say, you can't tell me until I finish watching
I
this.
totally was expecting to be upstaged by this particular video.
Oh my God. Okay, so everybody who is because you'll be hearing this secondhand because I didn't put headphones in. I'm just watching it, and you'll. Oh, now something on wheels is just going. This is. I think this obviates that. Oh, that's doing like a beautiful, like sort of like ballet dance, plie, not plie. That thing, you know, when ballet dancers cross their feet and then do little tippy toe steps. What's that called?
I don't. Do you mean are they jumping up in the air or are they doing?
No. They're standing. They're just doing.
Well,
like
I was going to say.
I
was going to say caressing, but all my ballet. All my friends listening who are ballet dancers will be just cringing at how crap my ballet. I think it's called carooing.
Okay, but you know what I mean, where they cross at the ankle and they do the little tiny little steps. Yeah.
I think that's called carooing.
Okay,
I had no idea how to spell it, though.
I have to tell you now that for anybody who's listening who is
Still
involved in the world of choreography and dance, you just should stop now, because nothing is going to be finer than that dance.
Well, it's funny you say that, because the email that it came in was from a colleague, and the subject of the email said, "Welcome to your obsolescence!" Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Not 1, 2.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's worth 2, if not 3 exclamations.
Don't you think? And it did make me laugh. It did make me laugh a lot, because I did think, wow, that robot is right now is dancing better than I've ever been able to dance. I was going to talk about something. About 3 days ago, I burst into tears. And I burst into tears because I read the news that nearly 1,000 people had died in that day from COVID-related illnesses, and part of those, and it happened again the next day. And for those people who are listening who are not in the UK or not in the US, those numbers are absurdly high. And there was something about the weight of it that, because, you know, and we all know that we've been living under a particular kind of weight. It's a very strange kind of, heaviness. And it got me thinking about the nature of responsibility. And this very simple idea, which is we have a certain number of, in this country, and I guess in all countries, have various guidelines, and they're called rules sometimes, or norms in other places. But certainly they are, because they're not really policed, you might say, they're just guidelines. Because I certainly have many friends who seem to ignore them. I'm really interested to hear what you think about the idea that we all seem to be able to make ourselves exceptions for whatever reason. Good reasons, bad reasons, all reasons, doesn't matter. And I'm not. My point is not to shame or judge those people or us humans about that. But I'm really interested to hear what you think about the nature of responsibility.
We're in the middle of this experience, this collective experience of COVID-19, the novel coronavirus. We're definitely a year into being aware of it. And we're getting on to close to a year in the UK, of living alongside of it.
Yeah, some form of restrictions.
It's hard for me to imagine a response that isn't coming straight from the question that you asked about how to behave during COVID-19.
And there have been notable exceptions, of course, in public figures who have been caught, you might say, red-handed, holding a party or driving up north or etc. But I'm not. Yeah. I guess I'm not. My interest is not that. It's about how to make sense of how we. In fact, maybe it's not even about COVID-19, really.
No, and I think I hear your question as not being about it, but my response is hard to climb over that particular hill to get to the other side, to get to the flatlands where we might talk about how we, hold ourselves responsible, but at the same time let ourselves off, because it's, there's those things about how, we expect people to pay taxes, and we expect people to kind of be responsible, and we get really angry when we hear about Amazon not paying any kind of local tax in the markets that they work in. I don't think Amazon have ever paid, or certainly not paid the levels of taxation that they should have paid to contribute to the UK economy, especially the way that Amazon and companies like Amazon have decimated high streets.
Your local business,
yeah. So there is a sense there of a set of behaviours that we see and I think we get angry about, but we maybe still continue to buy from them, or we don't declare that workshop that we did that one weekend where they asked us to just send in an invoice. So, there's all those things that we can just go, yeah, but this is just a one-off, isn't it? This is not like I'm rambling in the way that I'm rambling because I find it hard to get past the bit about COVID-19 because we're just experiencing people being able to legitimize their behavior in a way that is odd.
The one thing I think that I made an exception of myself, I said, this is okay to do this, was seeing my nephew in the summer, although always outside and always running around and not really making a lot of contact. But I think it was at a time, I can't remember precisely, but I think it was at a time when we weren't supposed to be doing that. I can't remember now. And, so I can hear the one-sided conversation in my head. Well, we're outside. We're not making physical contact. So lots of little things about mitigating risk, right? This is a low-risk activity. We're not sitting inside breathing over each other, although, the flip side is we're breathing heavily because we are running around. And I wonder if that's what's happening. We're all having those little conversations, which is to reduce the sense of cognitive dissonance. I know that this is not correct. This is not what I should be doing. But these are the various reasons why, in this instance, it's okay.
Aren't we always doing that when we move through life? Yeah, we're taught to think in terms of them and us from a really early age. When we're taught history at school, we're taught it through the lens of them and us. I think to a degree, we're always in a process of mitigating our behaviour because we are us, and then we're always criticising the behaviours of others because they are them. So, them and us.
But it's funny, isn't it? The we is so interesting. I read a interview with a football player this morning. He was talking about how his experience of COVID has really brought home who's important to him. You can imagine, family. I find it extraordinary that how limited our capacity to see beyond that very minor we, if you understand what I mean, the minor us, and the concept of family in a situation where it's so clear and that's why COVID is a really fantastic example of the limits and the importance of personal responsibility in relation to the other, because it's unseen, because you can never know how it is that you are participating in the circulation of this virus.
So I'm going to just confess that when we had the lockdown, I followed the letter of the law completely, with one massive exception. I didn't stick to the 1 hour outside rule because I've got a dog. So what I did was I got up at the same time that I always get up, which is I wake up at about 10 to 6, and I'm usually out of the house by about 10 past 6. And this is what I do. This is what I've always done before and after. So my pattern didn't change. I carried on walking the dog for about an hour and a half in the morning, working on the principle that I'd be getting back around about 20 to 8, probably wouldn't bump into very many people. So again, it's that sense of that mitigating against massive risk. This is not very risky behaviour. I'm not really going to see anybody because I'm basing that on my previous experience of walking the dog. And if I saw one other walker during the time that I was out, that would be a red letter day. It's like, oh, look at this, another person out at this time of day. And that's whether it's in the winter or it's spring or summer or autumn or whatever time of year I was out. The walks I went on, I didn't encounter anybody. The moment that lockdown started, and bearing in mind I was walking by 10 past 6 in the morning, one day, probably about 2 or 3 weeks into lockdown, I counted 17 people on the walk that I took.
Which was great, right? It's so great that people are getting outside and
Yeah, but on one level, I'm going, okay, I have no right to judge anybody because I am doing the same thing. I have made a decision to behave.
You didn't change your behaviour.
I didn't change my behaviour. Yeah. I continue to walk my dog in the morning for the period of time that I'm going to walk my dog, and then go for little walks later on in the day, like I've always done. That was my plan, and that's what I carried on doing. And on one day, 17 people.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where I found myself being really judgmental of these people. I was doing exactly the same thing.
They took your space, man. They took your space.
Well, it doesn't really... The rationale that I give about whatever it is that they're doing is irrelevant. I am we and themming.
Yeah.
I am us and themming, yeah? Because me and Jeff, we're us. This is what we do. This is what we've always done.
Yeah.
Nobody's, nobody was getting hurt before. And then all of a sudden, they all got in the way.
Yeah.
And they are the ones who are suddenly making it much more likely that this is a risky venture. No, they're not. I still have lungs. I'm still potentially breathing on people. So I found myself being caught in that cognitive dissonance of knowing that I'm breaking a rule, but also being really judgmental of the people who are similarly breaking the rule.
Yeah,
Who's right. Neither of us. None of the people who are encountering each other are right. They might, they might be righter. They might only be doing their 1 hour.
Yeah, that is like being a tourist in Venice and complaining about all the other tourists, isn't it?
I think you're right that COVID-19 has given us this sort of perfect storm of visibility because of its invisibility. That we become aware of other people's behaviours. But I'm not sure that we become aware of our own behaviours in relationship to it, because I think...
I really am fascinated by it. And I'm not excusing myself or anything like that. I'm profoundly fascinated by that capacity to make ourselves the exception. And I wonder how it is. Is it worthwhile trying not to do that?
How do you do that? Because you're talking there about a really high level of Buddhist non-attachment. You're talking about letting go of all sense of holding on to and just going, this is activity that is happening in front of me. I am a leaf on the wind. It's that kind of...
It's also part of not judging others as well, right?
Yeah,
it's not,
absolutely.
It's reducing the using and themming, as you put it so beautifully.
I'm sure we know people who are involved in that kind of work on themselves. And I'm sure that we've both seen them falter in day-to-day behaviours.
Sure.
But still think they're doing, they're doing a fuck ton more work on themselves than I am in relationship to the idea of trying to dissolve the us and them. And then they still fall short. How am I going to do that when I'm just, not involved in that level of work?
Oh, it's partly what I was trying to hint at when I mentioned the interview with the football player whose name's Jordan Henderson, and I'm just curious about the size of the us. You don't have to extend your horizons too far to imagine an us that makes the individual implausibly irrelevant. Even at the level of the country, which, of course, given our conversation at the beginning, how absurd nation states have clearly become in a time of a pandemic. The utter absurdity of a nation state. So there's something about the mega individualism that is able to make sense of our actions, even when we know, not in an abstract sense. There's nothing abstract about all those people that died yesterday and the day before, the nearly 70,000 British people who have died. There's nothing abstract about it. But even in those fucking circumstances, our capacity to effectively do what we want with some minor shifts. And it blows my mind, Lee. I find it really upsetting. I do.
I'm sorry that you find it upsetting. No,
thank you.
I do find I am sorry, because it is upsetting.
I'm not excusing myself, by the way. Again, I'm not. It's not.
No,
about
I know.
that. Yeah.
I know. You've already confessed to breaking the rules. I've confessed to breaking the rules. We're saying that we're not above this narrative. We're not above this conversation. But we're also.
Yeah, you want to be squeaky clean if you're doing that, don't you?
Well, yeah, but none of us are, and we're wading into this really complex territory where we're asking people to. Well, we're not asking anybody to do anything. We're reflecting upon the abstract concept of why can't people just do the right thing,
or see the world as being bigger than their own needs.
Yeah, and I find it very difficult to imagine how we would engineer that significant cognitive shift in a landscape where we've had over 40 years worth of me, with Thatcherism and Reaganism shifting the narrative of what is owed to us.
Oh, yeah.
We know that conversations have shifted from responsibilities to rights. And in some instances, that's been really beneficial and really positive in relationship to notions of human rights and what people should be allowed access to in order to be able to live safely. And there are lots of things about rights, about gender rights, about equal opportunities, all sorts of things that I'm a big fan of rights and them being inscribed in law in some way. The caveat to that is that responsibility, what responsibility do I have to my community, has been eroded. And of course it has, because there's no such thing as community. We know this because Margaret Thatcher told us it's the case. So we've had this for over 40 years. The idea of how we're going to then suddenly engineer that shift when the culture has been constructed to not do this, the idea that we would be able to take responsibility for ourselves when we've been constructed culturally to believe in this other kind of machine, and on top of that, particularly here in the UK, because I can only speak to that context because that's where I live, that we're going to somehow hold ourselves to a higher expectation than any of the people who are theoretically leading us hold themselves to. When we see Dominic Cummings driving his car to test his fucking eyesight, and
it still makes me laugh.
Because it's, how can you do anything other than laugh at it? Because it's ridiculous, and the idea that people were not somehow baying for his blood in a really kind of, and I mean in a primal way. I don't mean in a okay. And now here I go. I fall back into the them and an us, and I'm really aware.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
I'm
it's strong, isn't it?
It becomes but
it's
at
like
the same
some
time,
magical gravitational attraction.
Well, yeah, but then at the same time, I think the personalities that are involved in this make it really hard to not want to go there if you're of a left-leaning perspective, because I'm told.
Yeah, that's really dangerous, though, Lee, isn't it? Because it's just not true that the left is somehow kind of pure. This is, it really drives me bananas.
No. It's not about puritanical. It's about being told by. No, I think I either misspoke or didn't finish speaking. No, I'm not.
I might have interrupted.
I'm not suggesting that the left in any way, shape, or form, or left-leaning thinking or liberal thinking has clean hands. That is not what I mean. I think what I mean is the idea that the demonization that happened of the idea of something which is more socially responsible.
Yeah.
More socially responsible behaviours that was demonised by this particular government, then makes it hard to not go, hang about. You're expecting me to be socially responsible, but you don't have to be. And you just told us that the liberal elites are the thing. Well, what are you being if it's not elite? So there's that. That's where. That's what I mean. It's the hypocrisy. I guess I'm talking about, which is not, again, trying to make one side or the other the winner.
Yeah, in some strange unwinnable
exactly
game.
But I think I'm badly trying to stumble around the idea that I hear your question about how can we not take responsibility, and I guess I'm saying I don't expect anybody to be able to take responsibility in the light of a couple of generations worth of teachings that tell us we are all that matter.
I was listening to another podcast. I know that's a slight betrayal, of course.
And there you are saying just the other day that you think people should be faithful listeners. I told you, unfaithful.
No, it's a podcast called On Being, and I think the woman's name who hosts it is Krista Tippett. Anyway, she was hosting a conversation with an Episcopal bishop. His name is Michael Curry, and he just said this: you have to kneel and you have to stand. It really struck a chord with me, this idea of being willing to stand and also the humility of being willing to kneel. And there was something about, I don't know, just the conversation we've just had or we're having, it reminded me of that tension between different ways of being in relation to others and different ways of being in relation to things in the world.
I like the idea of you have to be willing to stand and you have to be willing to kneel. You have to be able to occupy two positions, multiple positions, more than two. You know, you have to be able to give in.
Paradoxical positions. Yeah.
You know, you've got to be able to give in to something, but you also have to be able to resist other things. I guess the complexity is that how do we make those decisions about what we resist and what we yield to? And we kind of come back to the conversation we've had in the past about belief systems, because you know there'll be people. I suspect there won't be people listening to us who might feel that the idea of wearing masks is ridiculous, the idea that 5G might genuinely be contributing to this plandemic. I don't think those people are listening to us. I'm sure they believe that they are kneeling and standing.
Yeah.
I believe that they believe they are yielding and that they are standing against in the way that feels wholly right. And I guess
we're not great at asking ourselves. Sorry, so please finish. I really should.
No, go ahead.
No, we're really not great at asking ourselves difficult questions, and even worse, at answering them honestly. We're really not great at that, are we? When I say we, I mean you and me.
I was going to say, we're just talking about the podcast now, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, we're really not good at this.
Maybe we're getting, or we were already really good at being in conversation with each other.
I think we've probably had 14 years worth of practice of talking, and neither of us have run out yet.
Well, you bloody tried.
Oh, you had to drop that on me. I was trying to ignore you. I wasn't trying to.
It was beautiful, but it's not because it wasn't. It was not because you didn't earn the right to try and get out. Or, sorry, given good reason.
Yeah. You were definitely a them at that point. So, I will genuinely cut this out, but I've had 2 text messages from people who have been pregnant recently, and it's just said, "Thank you for not pushing me under a bus." to which I have to respond and go, well, obviously I didn't mean you. I totally meant them. Thank you for not pushing me under a bus.
That bit out. You cannot cut that. What did you say?
I didn't mean them. I was just laughing. I didn't say anything. Yeah. Okay.
It's beautiful.
I didn't want to push any of you under a bus. We should probably encourage people to rate us and leave a review. Because if you're enjoying listening to Midlifing, if you rate us and leave a review...
To our shared expertise.
Particularly via Apple Podcasts, yes. It will push us up, not the rankings, which I don't think either of us are interested in, but it will mean that we show up on people... Yeah, of course we are, but don't tell them.
Oh, sorry. Cut that bit out.
It will make people more... It will make the podcast more visible to more people.
Nice. And I was going to suggest, actually, that because we are, in fact, interested in world domination, if each of you, faithful and unfaithful listeners, were to recommend a particular episode, something we think, I reckon this person would really like that, there's something in there that they would really hold on to, then I just encourage you to do that, so that because certainly word of mouth is really important, and it's a real pleasure for us to see how many people are listening and or at least downloading them and not listening to them.